Alright, welcome back to today's video. In today's video we're going to finish talking about the industry standard and then move on to testing methodologies. So, we last talked about how 0.75 microns or 0.7 microns for the industry standard for microfiber and why that's important, because it is used to remove 0.7 microns or above in particle size. Now, that's also important because viruses take over cells that are 0.75 to 1 microns in size. So remove those host cells, you've removed also the potential to infect another person with a virus. Think of it like this. You have a watermelon, you have a chain link fence. The watermelon seed, if I take it out of the watermelon, can go right through the fence, but that's not how viruses work. Viruses live inside of a host cell. Watermelon seed inside the watermelon. Throw the watermelon at the fence blocks it. That is how our host cells work, and that's also how masks work. So you remove those host cells and you remove the chance of infecting someone with a virus substantially. Okay, so what does this mean for Norwex? Well, their standard is 1/200th of a human hair, which is twice the industry standard. And that means their fibers are 0.3 microns in size. Now, 0.3 microns when it comes to the medical field is very significant. It is actually the de facto for gloves, gowns, and medical masks for being able to block 0.3 micron sized particles. And the reason why is because 0.3 micron sized particles are extremely difficult to deal with, and here's why. If we look at the chart or the graph here on the left, I don't really want to call it a graph, it's more of a display of motion. You see this particle moving around very sporadically, all over the place, very random. This particle is less than 0.3 microns, and this is what we like. This kind of random sporadicness is easy to deal with because it's like taking a bouncy ball about the size of a apple or a baseball, going outside to a soccer net and bouncing it inside. It has more chances to hit the net and to fall inside the net than it is to go through. On the right here, we have a 0.3 sized particle, 0.3 micron sized particle, just moving straight line, linear, and those are difficult to catch because if we were to throw that bouncy ball straight into the net, it has more of a chance to go through it. So that's why we deal with 0.3 micron sized particles. They're difficult to handle, so that is the de facto. So anything above 0.3 is actually easy to handle because they're heavier and they just fall straight to the ground or straight to the surface. Alright, so what does that mean for Norwex when it comes to backlock? That's an excellent question. So first off, what is backlock? Backlock technology is the addition of silver ions into the liquid polymer that we mentioned last video. Now, there's something called the Oligodynamic Effect, and it is how metals inactivate cells, including viruses and bacteria and other cells. What it does is, for some reason, when pathogens, microorganisms, or even viruses fall on metal, the reaction and the oxidation that happens between the two, it starts eating, it's like rust, it starts eating at its outer structure and breaking things down. Eventually it inactivates a cell to where its organs and basic functions do not work. Now, in the medical field, when we say inactivate, that is synonymous with the cell dying. It's just inactivate is more along guidelines for testing that we use, because you can't always guarantee that things are dead. So inactivate is the word that we use. Now, metals will inactivate viruses. It takes a little bit of time, but it does. It starts breaking down the corona, which is the crown or the outside envelope of a virus. And there's actually I think, 256 coronaviruses out there. The common cold is a coronavirus. Some are worse than others, as we have witnessed. SARS is not a virus. It's a condition that happens from a virus, but SARS is a pretty bad condition that's caused by a couple of nasty viruses. Okay, so the silver, what happens is copper, zinc, silver, and mercury are really good at inactivating cells. So this backlock self-sanitizes itself to keep it clean. It doesn't sanitize the surface per se. It sanitizes itself. It cleans itself so that in 24 hours you have a clean rag that you can reuse. That doesn't mean that you have to wait 24 hours to reuse the rag. It just means every 24 hours you have a clean rag. It sanitizes, and so sanitize means it removes enough microorganisms to a safe level. And in order to claim that, Norwex had to do two different tests. The first one is the ISO test, which is how well a cloth with any antimicrobial agent, be it chemical or natural, can self-sanitize. And if you look at the executive summary that I've also posted in the link, you'll be able to see those results of how well it was able to self-sanitize. Also, the EN 1174 test is used to certify medical equipment for sterilization for surgical rooms. How sterile is it? The -2 test means that it was only tested for microorganisms and living things. So microorganisms means bacteria and living cells. Viruses is not included in that test, the -2. It's in I think it's the -3 of the 1174. Okay, so what does this mean when people ask, okay, does this cloth do anything for viruses? I'm going to give you some information, and I'm going to allow you to make the decision. We've already talked about host cells. If you remove the host cell, there's no chance of infection. Host cells are very large, 0.75 to 1 microns. We know this cloth can remove 99% of bacteria. Bacteria is 1 micron in size. Actually, even small bacteria is 0.6 microns in size. So if it can remove 99% of bacteria, it can remove 99% of the host cells that we breathe out when we have a virus. But let's talk about one other thing. These are the test swabs. Now this is a very important section as a client to understand, to see why this cloth works, and also as a consultant on how to explain this to your client. We're very familiar with the protein residue swab test. These are used, people take a piece of chicken, put it down, smear it around, test it, and it turns purple, and it means, oh, there's protein there. A lot of people think that when we say protein, we're talking about like chicken or, what makes up chicken and stuff. That's not exactly what we're talking about. We're actually talking about proteins from blood. These swab tests from this company, I think it's Hygiena, is specifically meant to test surgical equipment for proteins found in blood. Now, why is that so important to test for the proteins found in blood? The reason being is because, one, they're smaller than viruses, at least half the size of a virus. Two, viruses use proteins to bring into host cells to help replicate. Three, mutated proteins in the blood can cause infectious type of diseases or infections, and these folded proteins are actually called prions, and here's some examples. Mad cow disease, Wasting's disease, and then if you click on this link, it'll take you to others that humans and animals can get from messed up blood proteins. So it's actually required to do a weekly protein swab test at a food establishment and a hospital weekly to check for these proteins, because you don't want mad cow disease in your meat and give it to people. That's happened before. So why is this important? Because when we do the protein test and we wipe down and this hygiena test comes back clean, as in it has passed, that means that surface is certified to be in a surgical room. It means there's no blood proteins on it. And if it can pick up blood proteins, it can pick up particles bigger than the blood proteins. So let's look at a little chart right here. If you look here, you'll see protein. It's a little bit smaller than 10 nanometers. Now, to give you some perspective, 10 nanometers is 0.01 microns. Very, very, very small. Flu virus and the average sized virus, including coronaviruses, are 100 nanometers, which is 0.1 microns. So, using the protein residue swab test, no proteins show up even after you wait 10 minutes and you still pass. That means you have removed particles smaller than viruses. So, use that to your discretion and to your advantage for clients or consultants, however you want to do it. But those hygiena residue tests are certified by I think it's the American Chemical Society, but it's also federally backed. And if you pass that test, that means your surface is sterilized and good enough to enter the surgical room. So, I just wanted to spread that little knowledge to kind of let you know how good these Norwex cloths are. Anyways, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you soon.